major in minor things. If you take up major time to do minor things, I'm telling you, you'll be behind the curve constantly. Time is precious. Life is not just the passing of time. Life is not just the passing of time. Life is a collection of experiences, their frequency and their intensity. Life is not just watching the clock tick away. Life is a collection of experiences, their intensity, their frequency. When my friend Mark died at age 44, someone says, that's young to die. But what if he lived 4 lifetimes in one? It might not be too young. Whatever the span of your life turns out to be, here's what you want to fill it up with: experiences and the intensity of those experiences. But now let's talk about the management of time. Now, jot this down: approaches to the management of time. Here's the first one: ignore the subject. I mean, that's good advice. Don't let anything overly bug you. Because remember now, you don't have to do anything. Someone says, well, I got to get a handle on my time. The answer is no, you don't. If you want to let it all go, you can let it all go. I mean, this is good advice. Somebody says, you ought, you ought, you ought. Jot this down. Ignore all the you oughts or you should. Only if they're giving general information. We should. It's better to say, if you're teaching, we should. Not you should, we should. Then you let me listen in without it being too confrontational. If everyone did this, see, that'd be great. And then you give a person a chance to choose to do it or not to do it. But when you start the you ought, now see, if I don't, now see, we've got some tension and maybe some problems. So you oughts seem to always create problems. Because this is personal dignity. And you don't want to destroy someone's dignity by doing all the oughts and they feel reluctant to do it. Now we've got problems. So if you want to, just ignore this subject on time management. Now here's the next one. Step down to something easier. The guy's in sales and he says, oh, heck with this owning something. Heck with managing. My life was never my own after I started to manage. I'm going back to sales. See, this is the key. If you're getting too pressed, you might consider stepping down to something with a little easier time pressure. Little girl says to her mother, Daddy comes home, brings his briefcase and pats me on the head and says hello, disappears and works on his papers. How come my daddy doesn't play with me? And her mother said, look, your daddy loves you very much, but he's so busy at work, he can't get it all done, he has to bring it home. He loves you, but that's why he can't play with you. And the little girl said, why don't they just put him in a slower group? So, jot this down now. If you don't have time for your kids, you might consider joining a slower group. Remember when I said some things I went for cost me too much? So reconsider. Next key to time management, and that's work longer and harder. But see, there's a limit to that. I almost lost my health the first year. I went so crazy about personal development and achievement. I just went bonkers. You know, I told you I was skinny. By the end of that first year, I was a walking shadow. And then it suddenly occurred to me, what if I got rich and too ill to spend it? I mean, that was a shocker. So I started developing a little more reasonable. Because I said, if 12 hours won't do it, I'll work 14. If that won't do it, I'll work 18. I mean, how many hours it takes. And sure enough, it cost me too much. So see, working longer and harder for some might be appropriate. You know, if you're just sitting around not doing that much, this might be good, work longer and harder. But you can only work so hard. Here's the key, not to work harder, but smarter. When you've worked as hard as you can, doing the best you can in terms of physical output in the time, reasonable time. Now here's the ultimate in the management of time, and that is you simply become more skillful. When I first got into sales, you know, I was around people that could get, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And when I first started, I could only get 1 out of 10. But here's what I did. I worked around the clock. so that I would make up in numbers what I lacked in skill. That's good in sales. You got to jot that down. When you're new, you make up in numbers what you lack in skill. Now, when you become more skillful, the numbers can go down because now your persuasive ability and all of that is now so high that you don't need to put as many numbers out. But at first, if you want to compete or if you want to really get good, you've got to put in the numbers. But if you get more from yourself, develop more of yourself, now the time management becomes an easier task. Now here's the next thing. Either you run the project or it runs you. I've found out when you start something, at first you're in charge. All of a sudden, a year later, it's in charge. Some of the companies I started, I'm telling you, I'm in control. A couple of years later, I'm out of control. At first, I've got it on the run. 2 years later, it's got me on the run. Haven't got enough time. I'm dizzy with trying to get it all done. So here's part of the key, and that's to get in charge. It's easy to start something. First thing you know, you're out of control. It's in control. The enterprise you get started now runs you ragged. Because I did that when I had the whole 13 offices and the big entourage. I'm telling you, it was like short nights and long days and just sort of the never-ceasing demand for time and activity, which was fine. At that time in my life, it was fine, and created a lot of good results and laid some good foundation for a lot of future careers that came from those unique times. There's a pretty long list of people who were inspired by it and educated by it and participated in that program I had going. But then I rechanged the format to sort of rearrange my own life personally, which has paid off for me. Now I have a heavy workload, but if you finally get to the place where you have most everything done for you, I still farm in Idaho, but I'm what's known as a gentleman farmer. A gentleman farmer gives orders and other people do the work. It's different than being a farmer doing the work yourself. I know that because I was raised in the farm country where I still have my farm, but now I have the luxury of participants who look after my agriculture, look after my home building. My daughter looks after all of my accounts and my residences and my real estate, and I have good partners in business. That's extra luxury, where you can do your specialty and other people working make it valuable. One of my albums is entitled, Take Charge of Your Life. Take charge of your time, take charge of your resources, take charge of your health. You're the one that's responsible for it. It's not a requirement of society that you not have a heart attack and take care of your family. That's not a requirement of society, but you must make it a requirement of yourself. Society doesn't require that you build a financial wall around your family nothing can get through. That's not a requirement of society. It's a requirement you impose on yourself to build a financial wall around your family nothing can get through. So impose on yourself this self-development of being in charge, taking charge of your life and your health and your future and your responsibilities and all the rest. Next, reasonable time is enough time to achieve all of your goals. Just jot that down. Reasonable time is enough time. I had to learn that. Reasonable time is enough time. Here's why. It's not the hours you put in, it's what you put in the hours. If you start depositing greater ideas into the hours you've got later than now, I'm telling you, later you can't believe the productivity that will flow. The ideas you can't think of now, a year from now, they'll start to flow. And when you deposit those ideas in the hours you've got, productivity multiplies by 2, 3, 5, 10. Next, time management essential, a written set of goals. And then do priorities on your goals. What's important this week? What's important this month? Here's the next one. Often review. Just go over your goals to make sure that your list is working for you. It's got you inspired. It's got you turned on. Somebody says, how come you're up so early? Say, if you were headed where I'm headed, you'd be up early too. Wow. If you were going to meet who I'm going to meet, you'd be up early. If it was going to stack up for you like it's stacking up for me, you'd be getting up early. Wow. Here's some more time management essentials. Learn to study what we call majors and minors. Here's what you must say when you pick up the phone. Is this a major conversation or a minor conversation? If it's minor, a few pleasantries and you're done. If it's major, maybe you've got to make a few notes. So here's the next one. Important conversations, make an agenda before you make the call. Just jot down a little agenda. It's so easy now to just talk out of your head. Did you ever hear a conversation end like this? Let's see, there was something else. See, you don't look that swift. I can't think of it right now. I'll call you back. See, you look a little incompetent. Let's see, there was something. It escapes me right now. Really? So have you got this now? Make an agenda before you make a call if it's an important call. Now later that saves you all kinds of stuff. You call John in, the salesman, say, John, remember those 4 things we went over? He said, no, we didn't talk about that. And then you pull out your daytime or whatever, and there's the list you made when you made the call. He said, oh yes, seems like I do remember. And you've got him with your list. If it's just, salespeople especially can talk you out of what's in your head. It's true. No, we didn't talk about that. And if you don't have a little proof, I'm telling you, it's gone. So make an agenda before you make a call. So what's major, what's minor? Now here's the key on this. Don't major in minor things. If you take up major time to do minor things, I'm telling you, you'll be behind the curve constantly. Here's what we learn in sales training. What's major time and what's minor time? Here's minor time, thinking about prospects. Here's minor time, making lists of prospects. Here's minor time, keeping books on prospects. Here's minor time, going to see the prospect. Here's minor time, evaluating the prospect after you've been there. That's all minor time. Here's major time, in the presence of the prospect. That's major time. If you're in sales and you took a look at a week, you'd say, my gosh, I'm spending 90% of my time on the minor stuff and so little time on the major stuff in the presence of. How many hours in the presence of in my day? How many hours in the presence of during my sales week? Because the time that really counts is in the presence of the prospect. Majors and minors. Here's another key time. It's easy to get faked out by being busy. Guy comes home at night all exhausted, falls in the chair and says, oh, I've been going. Here's the big question. Doing what? It's not the going. Some people are going, and they're doing figure eights. Their progress is small. So don't mistake movement for achievement. Here's another one in sales we learned. Don't mistake courtesy for consent. If somebody's pleasant and they nod, you say, oh, they're going to buy. No, they're courteous. You can't mistake courtesy for consent. Now, here's a big one, concentration. I had to learn this. All those years ago, I'm in the shower trying to compose a letter. Found it turns out to be a strange letter. So here's what I learned to do. Save the work till you get to the office. Save the work till you get to the work. Don't try to get to the office on the way to work. On the way to work, enjoy the way. In the shower, enjoy the shower. Then go to work when you get to work. I found this to be helpful. Concentration. Here's another big one. Learn to say no. I'm telling you, in such a social society we have now, it's so easy to try to be a nice person, saying yes, yes, yes to everything. Find yourself overloaded. Now you got to call and make the, well, gosh, you know, all the time it takes to back out of something that you said yes to too quickly. Here's what might be better. I don't think so, but if that changes, I'll call you. Little things you can use not to overcommit yourself. My friend Ron Reynolds says, don't let your mouth overload your back. It's a good one. Now here's a big one on time management. When you work, work. When you play, play. Don't mix the two. Don't work at play. Now here's one of the most important ones. Don't play at work. Work is too serious. You don't want the reputation of being the office joker. It's not a good one. Yes, there's time for some pleasant stories. Yes, there's time for a little humor. Yes, best if it's a happy office, of course. But I'm telling you got to be serious about work, because you're parting with a piece of your life for the work you do. Your work costs you a piece of your life. Here's what it's called: serious business. Not grim, not unhappy, but serious. Key. Don't play at work. The old expression, I don't think we use it anymore, horse around at the office. Play around, play jokes, play tricks. No place, not at the workplace. At the beach, yes. At the bar, yes. Somewhere else, not work. You got to treat work with all due conservative passion. Because it's leading you to your future. Next, analyze how you are. And if you have some weaknesses, it doesn't seem like you can change, here's the key: get it covered. I used to keep promising myself I'd keep the books, keep the books, keep the books. Finally, I gave that up. And back then, it only took me an extra $50, $60 a month for some accountant to keep the books. I said, no, I'm going to save the $50. You can't believe what I started losing in productivity because I tried to save the $50. So the key is, a lot of the time you can stay like you are, but just make sure you get it covered. Okay. Next, beware of the telephone and all other systems of communication, especially the telephone at home and systems of communication at home. Let all communication systems serve you, but don't let them intrude. When it comes time to have dinner with your family, you shut off all systems, unless the ones that can take messages silently. Don't let the phone ring. Don't let anybody intrude, come through the front door nor the back door, nor through the telephone or any other device. So you can't reach John and his family when he's having dinner. The President of the United States couldn't get through. If you develop that kind of a reputation, father, mother, when we have dinner, when we're visiting and have this time with our family, nothing intrudes. So don't let these clever little devices keep intruding. You've got to have a place that's sacrosanct, it's valuable. You don't let anything in for that period of time. I asked a guy one time, it's been many years ago, I said, what did your television cost? I knew he was a great television watcher. He said $400. I said, that's not true. He said, no, I paid $400 for this television set. I said, well, let me tell you what I think it's costing you, because I know what kind of talent and skills you've got. I think it's costing you about $40,000 a year. Not to own it, but to watch it. It's not owning a television set that's expensive. It's watching it that's expensive. What else could you do at that time? One, if you've got plenty of money in terms of lifestyle. But if you haven't got plenty of money, what if you took the television time and properly employed it by learning a couple of extra skills? No telling what would happen to your income. I mentioned this to this guy. He got so inspired and convicted with my little talk there that he had his brother-in-law bring over his pickup and haul away his television set.
He said, well, you could just take it away yourself. I said, no, I don't want to do that. You know, I want to do it right now. Come and get this thing and take it away. He said, I've got a new philosophy. I'm going to take my TV time and turn it into fortune. See, all it takes is an idea, and it doesn't have to be that radical, but he wanted it to make a statement. Let's get this thing out of here. And later, you know, he had another television, but now he learned to shut it off and use time wisely. But at the moment, he wanted to prove to himself that he was ready to do something radical. Said, Jim Rohn is right. This television is costing me a fortune. Not to own it. Owning is cheap. Watching it's what's expensive. So you just have to learn to ration the time. Television is useful, but you got to wisely use it. Just like food, you must wisely use food. In leadership, we teach enough food to be healthy and gather strength, and no more. So you just have to learn the no more. Make that your philosophy. How much rest? Enough to be healthy and gather strength, and no more. Why would you spend any more than just enough to gather strength and be healthy on both food and rest? But if you overindulge in food and rest, they become a detriment now, not a support. So I think if you look at things that way, let them serve but not intrude, it's like a television set. If you let it serve, fine, but if you let it intrude on everybody's time, the average family watches television, what, 7 hours a day? See, that's probably too much. It's not that the television isn't good, it is good, but it's too much time devoted to one fairly intrusive instrument in your house. So let it serve, not intrude. That's a good philosophy. I find if you come up with a philosophy and an attitude, it helps to set the tone of things you do, don't do, correct, rearrange, turn upside down, try it another way until something works better for you. I think that's good advice. How many stories do we hear now of some people that are addicted to the computer? The wife says, honey, let's go. And he can't let go. He can't shut it off. Then you know you've got a problem, right? So I think everything, doesn't matter whether it's alcohol or drugs or a computer or being online. I found out, not from my own experience, but from others I know, it's possible to be online and off track. So you got to make sure when you're online that you're not off track. But it's not difficult to be online and off track in terms of time allotment, what absorbs your attention. If all of your thoughtful time is used for busy time rather than creative time, then the encroachment on your creative time is just probably too heavy. We need time to think. Napoleon Hill's book says, think. Nowadays, they say, get online. Napoleon says, no, think. Think and let's grow. Let's all think and grow rich. Think of better ways to do things. Think of a better time, a day schedule. Think of better ways to be creative, not just busy.
One of the great time management savers is to learn to ask questions up front. Sometimes you talk to somebody for an hour, and then you ask questions and find out if you would have asked those questions up front, you could have saved yourself an hour. Asking questions up front helps you to get to the problem now. But if you just launch into some discourse, you might waste 30 minutes, waste an hour, when here's what you should have been talking about. After you finished an hour, you say, John, what's really the problem? He said, well, it's something personal. See, that's what you should have been talking about this whole hour. Next, learn to think on paper. Some ways to think on paper. One, solving problems. Take it out of your head and put it on paper. Another one is setting goals. Here's another good way to think on paper. It's a projects book. Each person you're working with and each project you're working on, get a loose leaf binder and a tab and some pieces of paper behind the tab and do a little continual summary of how it's going between you and that person and between you and that project. I call it a projects book. It is so useful to me. What's going on between you and this person? When you last got together, what did you talk about? And you got a few notes there. Here's what we talked about the last time we got together. Now when you get together again, you can review that so you'll know better what to talk about. When the president gets ready to travel and he's going to meet some important people, guess what they bring him? All these briefing books. Right? The last time you were with Khrushchev, Kennedy is informed. Here's what he said and here's what you said. Kennedy said, oh, that's valuable. I need to remember that. If a person is important, it's worth a little running account. You might even have a project book for your children. Here's what's happening between me and my child. We've talked about this, and we've talked about this, and we've talked about this. Next, a day timer. Keeping track of all of your appointments. You know, mine is all filled with, when to catch an airplane, and when to do a seminar, and when to sit down and have a conference, all the rest. Next is a game plan. If you've got a house and the insurance is going to come due and some other things are going to come due, you just put it on a spreadsheet and make sure it's taken care of. Key phrase, take things out of your head and put them on paper. And the key is to just experiment with different ways that helps you to do that. Now here's the last one, thinking on paper, and that's to keep a journal. One of the things I'm known for around the world, have been now for 39, 40 years, is keeping a journal. Now my journal is not necessarily a diary. It might be part diary. I'm flying over Ireland and I write down a few little things that impress me. Today I met this person. Wow, what an extraordinary event. Today I conducted this seminar in Rome. 1,000 people stood up and sang for me. I've got a little bit of a diary in there. But here's what primarily your journal is for. Collecting good ideas. A journal is to collect good ideas on your health, good ideas for your business, good ideas for your future, good ideas for time management. Because I used to take notes on pieces of paper and torn off corners and backs of old envelopes and restaurant placemats. And I threw all this stuff in a drawer. It did not serve me well. I finally learned to get a bound copy, right? And just keep a journal, right? If I was here, I had my journal, I'd be taking notes, right? These 2 days in my journal. Now, if you're caught without your journal, you just take the notes when you get back home. You put those notes in your journal, throw the paper away. Because we don't usually go through paper to review. But see, my journals now make up a significant part of my own library. My journal's all reserved privately for my children and my grandchildren. Can you imagine what I've collected over the years? It's unbelievable. There are 3 treasures to leave behind. Here they are. Number 1, your pictures. Don't leave the event unrecorded. It takes only a fraction of a second to say, here's who I was with. When I travel the world, we take all these pictures. And here's one of the gifts. People send me the pictures they took of me and them. It's part of the treasures I have on the farm. Incredible. A picture's worth 1,000 words to describe the scene, the emotion, what happened. Say, wow, this was an extraordinary day for me when I met these people. Here's what they told me happened to them when they went to my seminar 10 years ago. Wow, the drama comes back if you've taken the pictures. It's one of the treasures to leave behind when you go. Remember the old photographs that we have now of, 100 years ago, 70, 80 years ago, just a few photographs? What would it be like if you had thousands of photographs of the past, of your history, your mother, your father, right? Grandparents? So change all of that now for your children. Leave all your photographs as a record. Here's what's next to leave behind, and that's your library. The books that changed your life, the books that changed your health, the books that rescued you from oblivion, the books that you passed on to other people, they were so exciting for you, the books that made you financially independent, the books that developed your leadership, the books that gave you wisdom to ponder when things were tough, the books that got you through the winter, the books that helped you to plant in the spring and harvest in the fall.
I think you have to pay attention to the details. Don't let too much time pass without staying in touch. If we probably took a survey right now, here are the 20 most important people in my life. How long has it been since I sat down with this one or called this one or wrote a letter to this one? We'd probably say, wow, the man is right. Just that little comment, making a list of 20 and saying how long has it been, I can see where for some of them it's been too long. You know, they're considered very close friends. We just have to pay more attention. And I just now thought about that. Make a list of 20 and say, how long has it been? We try to think of it. We make a phone call. Say, wow, it's been too long. We got to have lunch. We got to get together. And some that may live in your own community where it's a little easier to stay in touch. But, you know, some of our friends are not close by. Staying in touch is just a vitally important part of developing a good relationship. Take care of those things that matter. What doesn't matter to you, say if nobody calls me on my birthday, that doesn't matter. But for someone else, it does matter. So you just make sure that gets done, those kind of things. It's easy, especially in a busy society. And like myself, you know, getting on an airplane, flying off to some other country, and be so busy doing that, and the preparation for doing it, and then recovering when you get home, it's easy to let things slide. But we always later have some regrets that we didn't stay in touch more often. Especially somebody older that passes, right? We say, wow, I should have made more phone calls and stayed in touch. But whatever it takes to keep a good relationship going, it's like tending a garden. You can't let it go too long without tending the things that matter, making sure it flourishes, something well-nourished, which is true of all of our values. We must protect them like a father, nourish them like a mother, make sure they give us full value. And then be of full value to someone. Not that you have to be around all the time, but to be available.
There's an ancient phrase, here's what it says: if you try to save your life, you will lose it. But if you will lose your life, meaning if you will invest your life, that's the best way to save it and to multiply it many times over. So here's the phrase: investing life into life has the potential of creating miracles. Investing life into life. Investing life into life creates a new baby. But investing life into life with ideas, information, association, influence can create enterprise, can create a corporation, can create a business, can create a movement, can create something that benefits many more people than just those few that might have invested in each other's lives. So that should be one of your goals, is to be valuable enough to invest in somebody else's life. Starting first if you're married with your children. And then invest in each other. Marriage and friendship, these associations are a chance to invest in each other. A business enterprise. Bill Bailey and I have been involved in other enterprises. But the enterprise, you know, fortunately was successful. And we had a chance to affect a lot of other people's lives. But guess what happened over those years, and which continues to today? We continue to invest in each other. I come up with a great idea, I get on the phone, I call him. He comes up with a book he's read, just said, this is a masterpiece, you've got to read it. So we have this chance to invest each other. And while we walk the farm country of Kentucky, we invest in each other. We walk the beaches of California, and he has a habit of grabbing your arm when you're walking and talking. So he would grab my arm until this one would get sore, and then we'd trade places so he could, you know, grab the other arm for a while we're walking and talking. But a chance to contribute to each other. And what I share with him, he shares with others. And what he shares with me, I share with you and others around the world. That contribution of sharing with each other, being influential, leadership, making a contribution to someone's life that no telling how far it may go from the time it starts.
Friendship is, wow, it's one of the most valuable possessions in the world. Good friends, relationships. You know, what really matters, when we all get right down to it, is that inner circle. When we should spend as much time as possible, maximum time, maybe borrow a little from other things that aren't quite that valuable, that are essential but not quite that valuable, and spend more time, family, inner circle, close friends. Because that's where a lot of the drive and ambition to do well comes from. Making dreams come true for that inner circle. you and them furnishes the fuel for high ambition. Not to be ambitious just for the name or for the fame or for the money or for the useful things you can do like generosity for the future, but at least to do as much as you can to nourish that association and communication inner circle. Conversations in art, whether it's with a child or whether it's with husband and wife or friends. Used to be years ago, we wrote letters that only got sent or, received once in a while. Now we just jump on the phone and talk. But back then, people seemed to take thoughtful care about putting into words how they really felt. And it's easy to be a bit too casual and not put as much how you really care into language, especially when we're talking all day long and all day long. It's hard to be that unique when we really would like to be unique, say something extraordinary about how we feel, but it gets lost in sort of the mundane, ordinary conversation rather than taking the time to say something unique about how you care and about how you feel. Each new occasion is a chance to be, there's one expression called born again or reborn. We have a father for the first time, as well as a new baby. We have a new father. So it's the new baby's life to work out. Now it's also the new father's life. And probably as a father, best instruction would be to study and practice and work hard at seeing if you couldn't be a Class A father. If it's the mother's first time, we have a brand new baby but a brand new mother. Now that she has a chance to live a brand new life, different life experience than ever before, shouldn't she study and practice and learn and listen, try to find ways to become a Class A mother? About 16 years ago, I became a grandfather, and I have practiced diligently now the last 16 years of being a 5-star grandfather to my 2 grandchildren, Nathaniel and Natalie. They're exceptional, highly talented. I just published a book of my granddaughter's poems that she wrote when she was 12, and the art illustration by her brother Nathaniel. I Love What I See is the title, by Natalie Pangrazio. Now she's 15, and she's written now a collection of 10 stories for children. And her brother, Nathaniel, is an accomplished classical pianist. He writes music, sends it off for competition. These are talented kids, artists and writers and musicians at such a young age. So what I've done is try to specialize, helping my granddaughter publish this book when she was, 14. The poem she wrote when she was 12. It's really good.
I've got to read you something. I told you about my granddaughter, Natalie. She wrote these poems, and we're publishing them, and here's one. When she was 12. It's called Metaphors of Flowers. From those whose imaginations love to take flight, they will use even a flower to determine wrong from right. An iris is like wisdom, the deep color like the depth of knowledge, and the yellow like the bright ideas one receives. The knowledge spreads upwards, as do the iris's leaves. A lily is simplicity like the whiteness of its flower, but in simplicity there is beauty like the yellow stamens tower. Truth is like a dandelion which is bold and has not sinned, and truth is spread far and wide like dandelion seeds upon the wind. They soon find a place to rest and grow in someone's heart, and the cycle begins again just as it did start. A daisy is like happiness and spreads its face to the sun. It loves everything around it and in everything finds fun. Hate is like a thistle, which is awful and sharp to the touch. It combines envy, anger, and most of all, disgust. And finally, best of all, love represents a rose. Love is sweet to your heart as a rose is to your nose. Love combines trust, hope, faith, and integrity. There are good paths and bad paths, and no matter which one you chose, love is just as sweet as the loveliest rose. My granddaughter.
everything you can think of to dazzle your grandchildren and have them think you're the greatest and the best ever. But it's pure joy, and you have to pay attention. It's some work involved, of course, in making a good relationship like that work, but the payoff is incredible for the small price to pay. One of my dear friends asked me, he said, I've got teenagers now. What else can I do to influence their life? And I said, maybe not that much. But here's two good words to consider. Now that they're teenagers, the key is to be available and capable. Capable of good answers when they need them, capable of counsel when they need it, available when they need to make a call, but trying to daily influence somebody's life, you know, after they've become, especially teenagers, right? It's a tough job to do. But if you settled for that, being available and capable. I want to be well-read and have good command of language and be able to translate my own feelings and experiences into useful conversation so that when the need arises, I'll have something valuable and wise to say, however short or long it may be. It's like fishing. You know, you can't jerk too hard or you lose them. And you can't leave too much slack. You know, let them off the line, they're gone. So it's called pull, 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 easy, easy, pull, pull, easy, easy. To learn how to pull, catch fish. Kind of the same with communication, strong enough but not too strong. It can't be weak or that's more a presence. But in communication as well, well-chosen words mixed with measured emotion, not too much, not too little. When the actor gives a performance, if the script is well written, that's part of the structure. The rest is delivery. Part of it is style.